Welcome to Washington State Legends of Soccer and our series Conversations with a Legend Olympics edition. I'm Frank MacDonald and our producer is Leanne Johnson. Today our guest is Kasey Keller, and of course he's made in Washington. Kasey grew up in Olympia, attended North Thurston High, then became an All-American at the University of Portland. He went on to become the most capped keeper in the United States national team history and a three-time U.S. Soccer Player of the Year. Also a success in England, Spain, and Germany before coming home to play for the Sounders. What we're talking about today is his experience in representing the United States at the 1996 Summer Games in Atlanta. So good to see you again, Kasey. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Frank.
Hey. So the Olympics are coming up in just a matter of days,
Yeah.
and so we're revisiting with a few Washington-based Olympians. And I'll start off by saying you're a student of the game, and the various youth national, senior national teams that you were a member of. Was thinking back to your maybe your high school, but certainly your college days, was an Olympic experience on your bucket list back then?
Not really. I think part of that is and not to be crass. I mean, because obviously we all growing up in America have uh, just a huge positive response when it comes to the Olympics. It's just not, the main, particularly for men's soccer. It's just not the main focal point. So much so that the Olympic Committee with FIFA moved it to an under 23 tournament. And then because of stadiums and teams and everything else, it's normally the number one attended and therefore the number one money generator for the Olympics. So they then decided that it made sense to have three overage players involved to then give it that little bit of a buzz to get a name recognition, because there was potentially to have a lot of teams that didn't have players that people had heard of. So when I go back to my first Olympic experience, and that was qualifying for the 92 Olympics,
Mhm.
which was my age group,
Yeah.
I had, we had been in the process of we had qualified, and then I signed for Millwall. And the Olympics was in Barcelona. Obviously, Spain and England aren't very far apart. But there was a large series of camps and exhibition games in preparation for that tournament. And the way that my work permit read, and I was the first person in England that they implemented this new ideology on how to keep your work permits, is I signed a 3.5-year contract at Millwall, but I had a year and a half to prove myself.
Okay.
And if I didn't break into the first team in that year and a half, then I would lose my work permit and not be able to play in England any longer.
Okay.
And after some conversations between Millwall coaching staff hierarchy and the hierarchy at US Soccer and the coaching staff with the under 23 team,
Mhm.
there was some negotiations going on, but in the end, the coach wanted me, available for the 3 months of camps. Millwall said, "Look, there's no reason for that. He'll be with us. He'll fly over to the Olympics, 4 or 5 days before the tournament starts." US Soccer said that wasn't good enough. Millwall said, "Well, unlucky." And sometimes, a lot of times you have to put tournament into perspective as opposed to your professional career.
Yeah.
Now, so I ended up playing 202 games in 4 seasons for Millwall.
Yeah.
And that forementioned season that I won the starting spot in preseason, well, just after preseason, 2 matches into the year, I played, I think, 50 matches the rest of the year and was voted player of the year by the Millwall fans. So I don't know if that becomes a reality if I miss all of or a large chunk of preseason to what I think it counted as 3 matches in the Olympics
Mhm.
Um, Top striker Steve Snow being benched, Lothar Osiander being named the worst coach at the Olympics. All for what was the real jumping off point for my career. And so that's difficult. Of course, I was disappointed. Of course, I wanted to represent my country at the Olympics, but at what expense? At the expense of being involved in 3 matches and not having a career. And so what I was very fortunate is when Timo Lukowski took over the Olympic team in '96.
Mhm.
He got a hold of me very quickly and asked if I would be interested in being one of the overage players. And then when Bruce Arena took over after that, and so I was really excited that I was able to still have that Olympic experience, even though I missed out on my age group in uh, in in '92.
In 92, I think Chris Henderson was on that team, and he, I believe, got injured in like the last training session before the Olympics.
Yeah, that's the tricky part, Frank. I mean, you can, and that's the problem about tournament play is you see that all the time. You see guys, before a World Cup, before whatever else, and then but for myself and what Millwall said is, we've made an investment. We need you to win the starting spot, or we lose that investment. Um, 3 games isn't worth it, and we need you to be here. Now it's obviously different. With the Gold Cup going on right now, Claudio Reyna and I used to joke about that at times. Yeah, I'd rather be here playing national team games in the Gold Cup than doing 3-a-days in preseason. But you can only do that when you're established at your club,
Yeah,
and you can get back 2 or 3 weeks before the season starts and not lose your starting position. You can't do that as a kid that hasn't broken in yet.
yeah, yeah. So 96, it sounds like, and I'm not going to say it fell in your lap, because obviously if you weren't established and hadn't established yourself overseas, Timo doesn't pick up the phone,
Right.
or however he
Right.
communicated to you. W- you are seeing the Olympics grow in stature. I'm trying to think how old you as you'd be probably a 14-year-old when the '84 games,
Right.
which are getting huge crowds, but they don't show it on TV
Right.
for
Well, that's almost the case for a lot of Olympic soccer, right? I mean,
yeah.
and still is the case. And I think part of that is, at least in America, right? And then obviously it hasn't helped that the men's team has failed to qualify for the last several Olympics as well.
So the other thing that is changing is well, the '84 games are in the United States. The '88 are in Seoul. We talked to Brent Goulet.
Right.
'92 is in Spain. '96 they're coming home.
But back in '88, it was still the national team. '92 was the first year that
Oh,
it
the
changed
age group.
to under 23.
Okay.
So Brent went, kind of as the U.S. national team qualified. So then it was after that it changed to an under 23 tournament,
I see. Okay.
where a lot of countries didn't really think of Olympic soccer and would send more or less a B team or an under 23 team
Mm,
anyway. And particularly if there was, European championships, or there was, qualifying rounds. Normally it would fall under European championship years.
yeah.
And so those guys had just played a European championship and they needed some time off, and they weren't going to play in the Olympics. So that was when FIFA made that decision to move it to an under 23 tournament.
So excited when you get that call from Timo and
Oh, for sure. Yeah, 100%. And it happened early enough that it wasn't something where I was just added to the team right before the Olympics. I mean, I went on trips, several trips with the team in preparation, summer before, anytime there was an opportunity to get together with the Olympic team. In fact, I probably missed a few national team camps because I was, with the younger guys, preparing, for the Olympics.
Okay. So 96 is also the first year of MLS, and as opposed to last year, or I mean, it's open and it's so there is the age group, but it's also going to be a team that is primarily made up of pros, not just like indoor pros or
Right. Not
part-time
like the
pros.
'90 World Cup team. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're one of the overage players. Describe that squad makeup and the belief or the expectations for 96.
Well, you had, because I started that preparation, in the summer of '95, or maybe even a little bit earlier. I can't exactly remember the first trip I went on. And it really was a bunch of college kids. I mean, at that stage, because as you mentioned, MLS hadn't started till the year starting. Then those guys got drafted, into different MLS teams and things like that. But yeah, it really was for me, I think I was the only married guy, stuff like that. So it was kind of going back a little bit.
Yeah.
And, but at the same time, I always felt a responsibility, and, that carried on to when I came back to MLS with the Sounders. But you set a standard, for professionalism. You do that day in and day out, and then that, carries through. And so I took that responsibility. And I think that was a big reason, why they reached out to me to do that in the first place. It was to be a part of this side, to see if you can, uh, bring that professionalism. And Claudio Reyna was a part of the team as well. And I think at that stage he may have just gotten to Leverkusen. I'm not sure. And but really, but hadn't been playing for the first team yet. But then, because he was a part of the '94 World Cup team, even though he was of age, he still counted as an overage player.
Oh, okay. So if you'd appeared, okay, for the senior team, then
Right.
that's
So then Alexi Lalas came in as the, kind of go straight down the spine, right? Kind of get, center midfield, center back, goalkeeper, and see how that went.
okay. What was there a huge expectation for yourself, or what did you want to get out of that tournament?
Well, I think like any tournament, you want to get out of the first round and move through, and see how you could align yourselves. I mean, we had a tough draw. I mean, we had Argentina, Tunisia, and Portugal, and obviously with Argentina being one of the favorites, and Portugal, obviously we've seen Portugal,
Yeah,
basically from that time onward, just dominate European sports, or at least be a big name in European
sure.
sports. So um, we knew it was going to be tough. I think the other thing that was different for us is not being in Atlanta at all.
Yeah.
Not being at opening ceremonies, not being at, because I mean, I think we had a match either the night before, or so I think we actually started the tournament before opening ceremonies. So it was, and Atlanta and Alabama, Birmingham did a great job of trying to create a mini, experience, but it's not the same, obviously. But the crowds were phenomenal. The fans were great. We performed well, and unfortunately, with 4 points, we were so close. I think we hit the post in stoppage time to beat Portugal. What would have beat Portugal 2-1 in that match. And I just remembered that we were so close. We were pushing hard for the winner. I was having to make saves because we were pushing numbers forward, and the crowd at RFK, because that final match was at RFK. It was the record attended crowd of any match ever at RFK. And it was just a shame because we were so close to really making that Olympic magic, that the U.S. is so custom
Mhm.
to experiencing, and it was frustrating. That was the most frustrating part of the whole thing.
So when it's over, yeah, you were in contention to advance right up to that final match day. Did you like book it to go home? Brent talked about going to the closing ceremonies in Seoul. I don't know if you had to just head back to.
No, I think I had to head back to Olympia and then get prepped to go back to preseason.
Okay. So did you ever get in the Atlanta
Not
city limits?
nowhere near.
Interesting, isn't it? I mean, it really. Uh, did your family get any Olympic tickets? Were there
Oh
any
yeah,
fringes?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Kristen and her mom came to Alabama. I can't remember if she came up to DC or not, but yeah, for sure. It
And
was three
what do you
kids, Frank, so that was easy.
well, did it when you look back on it now, does it seem kind of you've had a ton of experiences,
Right.
but where does the Olympic experience kind of
Yeah,
uh
I think the thing about it is you understand of just that's the under 20s. That wasn't the Olympics.
I couldn't find the Olympic team.
As they're throwing some nice hair photos as they
We're
come
trying
in,
hard.
but it's it was a really good experience, Frank. And I think so much of it is we were very competitive.
Mhm.
Although we didn't quite match what we would have liked to have matched of what we knew we were capable of doing. Um, the atmosphere in the matches was second to none. I mean, it was as good as you could ask for.
Yeah.
And that's why it was even more frustrating that, okay, look, losing to Argentina, big deal, right? And I think we scored super early, and then we showed our nativity. We gave a ball back, flipped a ball back to somebody, they put it down, played fast, and we got hit on a counter, right? Stuff like that. And so you have a bunch of kids that maybe they'd had some international experience, under 20s, different stuff, but this was a little different level, and it was a big and I think the guys really grew up in that first match. You're
Yeah.
playing against Tunisia, a side that we obviously, when we got this draw, we said that's a must win. We won that match comfortably 2-0. And then what set us up for this match against Portugal? And what the problem is what we really needed in the match before was Argentina to beat Portugal,
But they drew.
and they drew, and that really made it difficult, and so knowing that we had to beat Portugal, I think we went a goal down. We got the equalizer, and like I said, we were pushing and had opportunities, and the crowd, was feeling that something special was about to happen, and like I said, it was it was out off the post as opposed to in off the post.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine RFK would actually be shaking.
Oh, RFK was such a tremendous. I was fortunate enough to play, a lot of World Cup qualifiers there, some huge friendlies. Obviously this match in the Olympics, and it was such a great environment. 56,000, big but not too big. So you could get 45, 50,000 in there, nice, close, right on top of you. It was a real special venue.
Well, thank you. Anything else you want to add on what you think that these kids are missing by we have what, two generations
Three,
now of three
three in a row.
missing this experience.
It is, well, and also what kind of the point that I mentioned is that it was a real growing experience for a lot of players. Now, all you have to do is look back through, a U17 World Cup, a U20 World Cup, an Olympic team, and you see that a majority of those guys never, really, make it with the full team. But for those that do, and for those that sometimes it's that boost that kind of helps them in their professional career or whatever it is,
Yeah.
Uh, I saw some guys mature, right in front of my eyes, and to miss that experience, and then also to miss it for the guys that are fortunate enough to be able to be an overage player as well, and to kind of take that experience. Yeah, it's a real shame, and obviously there was a huge disappointment when the U.S. failed to qualify for this last Olympics again, and it's a real shame because it is a great experience that they're missing out on.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you got that experience,
Thank
even
you.
though it was nowhere near Georgia. But we were proud to
Well,
have you.
Alabama's not that far from Georgia, but it was we couldn't see it. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, Kasey, thanks for sharing your stories here today and all the trailblazing you've done for our state and U.S. soccer fandom and players in general. Thank you very much. Uh,
Thanks,
Thanks
Frank.
to our producer, Leanne Johnson. Thanks to all of you for watching our Conversation with a Legend Olympic edition. For more on the history of Washington State soccer and to learn more about Washington State Legends of Soccer, go to wasoccerlegends.org. We appreciate your support and we'll see you next time.